My father died in a forest fire in 1987. I was 10 years old. Last month I found him alive at age 74, living with a Bigfoot family in the Oregon wilderness. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I'm sorry, son, but I chose them over you, and I'd do it again." This is the story of why he made that choice, and why, after 36 years of anger, grief, and unanswered questions, I finally understand. My name is David Morrison, and this is my father's confession. To understand what my father became, you need to understand who he was before. James Morrison wasn't born a forest ranger. He grew up in Detroit, inner city, concrete and steel. His father worked at the Ford plant. His mother cleaned houses. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like boiled cabbage and engine oil. He told me once that he didn't see a real forest until he was 17 years old. It was 1965. His uncle, his mother's brother, invited him to visit Oregon for the summer. Uncle Frank had moved west after the war, bought 40 acres of timberland near Silver Creek, built a cabin with his own hands. My father took a Greyhound bus for 3 days straight, crossed the entire country, and when he finally arrived, when Uncle Frank drove him up that winding mountain road and he saw those ancient Douglas firs for the first time, he said it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. He never went back to Detroit. He worked for Uncle Frank for 2 years, learning forestry, learning the land. Then he joined the U.S. Forest Service in 1967, right out of high school. Started as a grunt, clearing trails, fighting fires, maintaining campsites. He loved every minute of it. In 1972, he met my mother, Sarah Chen. She was a biology teacher at the high school in Bend. They met at a community meeting about logging regulations. She argued passionately for conservation. He argued for balanced resource management. They got married 6 months later. My father once told me, "Your mother taught me that the forest wasn't just a resource to be managed. It was a living system to be respected. She changed how I saw everything." I was born in 1977. For the first 10 years of my life, we were happy, really genuinely happy. My father would take me on hikes every weekend, teach me to identify trees by their bark, birds by their calls. We'd camp under the stars, and he'd point out constellations, tell me stories about the old loggers and miners who used to work these mountains. He taught me the ranger's oath when I was 8 years old. We were sitting by a campfire roasting marshmallows. It was late summer 1985. The sun had just set, painting the sky purple and orange. "David," he said, "do you know why I do this job?" "Because you like trees," I said, mouth full of marshmallow. He laughed. "I love trees, but that's not why. I do this job because of an oath I took, a promise." "What kind of promise?" He got serious then, looked me right in the eyes. "I promised to protect the forest and all the creatures in it, not just the animals people like, the deer, the eagles, but all of them, the mice, the beetles, the fungi, the things most people never notice or care about. I promised to be a guardian, to put the health of this ecosystem ahead of convenience, ahead of profit, even ahead of what people think they want." "That's a big responsibility, Dad." "It is, but it's important, because if people like me don't protect it, who will?" I thought about that for a long time, watching the fire crackle. "When I grow up," I said, "I want to take the oath too." My father smiled. "Maybe you will, son, maybe you will." That was 2 years before the fire, 2 years before everything changed. In those final 2 years, I started noticing small things that didn't make sense at the time, but now. My father would sometimes come home from multi-day patrols, acting strange, distant, preoccupied. My mother would ask, "Everything okay, James?" He'd force a smile. "Fine, just saw something unusual out there. Can't quite figure it out." "What kind of unusual?" "Tracks, really big tracks. Not bear, not elk, something I've never seen before. I remember one night in particular. Spring of 1987, I woke up around 2 a.m. to get water and heard my parents talking in the kitchen. "You need to report it, James," my mother was saying. "If there's something dangerous out there." "I don't think it's dangerous," he interrupted. "That's the thing, Sarah. These tracks, they avoid human settlements. They move at night. They're careful, intelligent." "What are you saying?" A long pause. "I'm saying maybe we're not the only ones living in these mountains who deserve to be left alone." I didn't understand what he meant then. Now I do. My father had already encountered them, the Bigfoot families. Before the fire, he was already starting to understand what they were, what they needed. He just didn't know yet that he'd have to make a choice. August 23, 1987. 5:47 a.m. My father's shift started early that morning. He kissed my mother goodbye, ruffled my hair as I ate cereal at the kitchen table. "Be good for your mom, David. I'll be back Tuesday night." "3 days?" I complained. "That's forever." 3 days is nothing. I once spent 2 weeks tracking a lost hiker. Your mom was ready to send a search party after me. My mother smiled, but there was something in her eyes. Worry, premonition, I don't know. "Be careful out there," she said. "Always am." That was the last normal thing he said to us. The Silver Creek fire started at 11:23 a.m. Lightning strike, they determined later, hit a dead pine tree on the ridge above Whiskey Creek. The tree had been dying for years, beetle kill, dry as kindling. In normal conditions, it would have been a small fire, easily contained. But 1987 had been a drought year, the worst in 40 years. The whole forest was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. By noon, the fire had consumed 200 acres. By 1 p.m., 800 acres. By 3 p.m., over 2,000 acres and growing exponentially. The wind was the real killer. It shifted directions every hour, unpredictable, pushing flames in directions that contradicted every fire behavior model. Seasoned fire crews were caught off guard. Containment lines failed within minutes of being established. And in the chaos, people were trapped. My father was coordinating evacuations from the Silver Creek Ranger Station when the call came in. A family, Richard Kellerman, his wife Patricia, and their 12-year-old daughter Emily, had checked in at the Miller's Ridge trailhead that morning. They were supposed to be day hiking, but they'd gone deeper than planned. Now the fire had jumped Highway 20. Miller's Ridge was cut off completely. The family was trapped. "I'll get them," my father said, just like that. No hesitation. His supervisor, Tom Brennan, tried to stop him. "James, we can't risk personnel. The wind's too unpredictable. We've already lost contact with 2 fire crews." "They're civilians, Tom. A kid. I'm going." Tom knew better than to argue. My father had that look, the one my mother called his ranger face. Set jaw, determined eyes, immovable. "Take a radio. Check in every 10 minutes. "Will do." He took his truck as far as the fire line would allow. Then he went on foot, carrying a fire shelter, extra water, and his radio. The smoke was already thick. Visibility down to 50 feet. Ash falling like black snow. He found the Kellerman family at 4:17 p.m., according to the time-stamped radio log. They were huddled behind a rocky outcrop, trying to breathe through wet shirts. Emily was crying. Richard looked panicked. Patricia was trying to keep everyone calm, but you could see the fear in her eyes. "Forest Service," my father shouted, over the roar of distant flames. "I'm here to get you out." The relief on their faces was immediate. "Thank God," Richard gasped. We thought no one was coming." "I'm here now. Stay close. Do exactly what I say." My father led them through the smoke. He'd memorized the terrain. 15 years working. This district meant he knew every trail, every creek, every landmark. Even in near-zero visibility, he could navigate. They made it to a safe zone by 5:30 p.m. a natural fire break where a creek widened into a small pond. The fire wouldn't cross water. "You're safe here," my father told them. "Fire crews will reach this area by nightfall. I need to head back. Make sure—" "Our gear," Richard interrupted. "Our packs. We left them at the campsite. My wife's medication. She has asthma. Without it—" He looked at Patricia. She was already wheezing, breath coming in short gasps. The smoke had aggravated her condition. My father didn't hesitate. "Where's the campsite?" "Half a mile north, by the old hunting blind. Stay here. I'll be back in 20 minutes. He shouldn't have gone back. Everyone would later say that. Tom Brennan would say it at the memorial service. The fire investigation team would say it in their report. But that was my father. Someone needed help. He helped, even if it meant taking a risk. He radioed his position at 5:47 p.m., heading to retrieve civilian supplies, Miller's Ridge North Site, back in 20. That was his second-to-last transmission. What happened next, I only learned years later, from my father himself, sitting in that forest clearing. 36 years after the world thought he died, he found the campsite. The packs were still there. Richard's medication, their car keys, some food. He grabbed everything, turned to head back. That's when the wind shifted. In an instant, the fire changed direction. Flames that had been moving east suddenly swung north, pushed by a violent gust that seemed to come from nowhere. My father was directly in its path. He ran, dropped everything except his radio, tried to make it back to the creek, but the fire moved faster. It was like a living thing, he told me. Like the flames had intelligence, purpose. They cut off every escape route. Every direction he turned, there was fire. The smoke got so thick he couldn't see his own hands. His lungs burned, his eyes watered. He fell to his knees, gasping. He keyed his radio one last time. 6:03 p.m. Final transmission. "This is Ranger Morrison. I'm cut off. Fire's all around me. If I don't make it, tell Sarah and David I love them. Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them—" Static. The radio died. Heat had melted the battery. My father lay down, curled into a ball, covered his head with his arms, prepared to die. That's when he felt it. Hands, massive hands, lifting him. He thought he was hallucinating. Smoke inhalation, oxygen deprivation, his brain creating comforting delusions in his final moments. But the hands were real. Through the smoke, he saw her, 9 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown fur, eyes like dark amber, face that was wrong, not ape, not human, something in between. She picked him up like he weighed nothing, threw him over her shoulder, and she ran, through flames that should have been impassable, through smoke that should have suffocated them both. She moved with impossible speed, impossible strength. My father passed out. When he woke up, he was underground. The cave was enormous, cathedral-sized. Bioluminescent fungi grew on the walls, providing dim blue-green light. The air was cool, damp. The sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep in the darkness. He sat up. His body ached, burns on his arms, his neck. His lungs felt like they'd been scraped raw. 7 pairs of eyes watched him from the shadows. The Bigfoot who'd saved him, Alpha, sat closest. Behind her, a massive male. 3 juveniles, maybe 4 or 5 feet tall. 2 adolescents, gangly and curious. A family. They'd been fleeing the fire too. This cave was their emergency shelter, their safe house, and they'd brought him with them. "Thank you," my father croaked. His voice was barely a whisper. Alpha tilted her head, made a low sound, not quite a growl, more like a rumble from deep in her chest. My father fainted again. For 2 days he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, they tended to him, brought him water in woven bark containers, applied a paste made from plants to his burns. It smelled awful, but the pain lessened almost immediately. The juveniles watched him with endless curiosity. One of them, a young female, brought him berries. laid them carefully next to his head, then scurried back to Alpha's side. The massive male, Alpha's mate, kept his distance, watched, assessed, decided if this human was a threat. On the third day, my father was finally strong enough to sit up, to think clearly. He tried to stand. Alpha immediately moved to block the cave entrance, not aggressive, just firm. "I need to go," my father said. "My family, they think I'm dead. I need to tell them." Alpha made a series of sounds, complex, like language, and then something impossible happened. Images flooded my father's mind, not his memories, hers. He saw a family of Bigfoot, including a young female, Alpha's daughter he somehow knew, living peacefully in the deep forest. Then hunters, 4 men with rifles, tracking, setting traps. Then gunfire, screaming, blood, 3 Bigfoot dead, including the daughter, her body loaded into a truck bed, driven away, sold. Then one of the hunters' faces, clear, unmistakable, Richard Kellerman, the man my father had just saved. My father reeled back, gasping. How did I? Alpha touched her head, then touched his, made a soft sound. More images, newspaper clippings, police reports, missing persons files, hikers who'd gotten too close to Bigfoot families, who'd taken photos, reported sightings. Within months, hunters would arrive. Always the same pattern: track, kill, dispose, sell the bodies to private collectors, medical labs, wealthy eccentrics who kept exotic specimens. At least 30 killings that Alpha knew of. Probably more she didn't. An organized network, systematic, methodical, profitable, and Richard Kellerman was part of it. My father's hands started shaking. I saved him. I saved a monster. Alpha made a sound, softer, sadder, more images. Kellerman with his daughter Emily, pushing her on a swing, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. A monster to Alpha's people, a father to his own child. The complexity of it made my father's head spin. "So what do you want from me?" he asked. Alpha showed him. The vision was clear, detailed, specific. If my father returned to human society, he'd be questioned, investigated. How did he survive? Where was he? What did he see? Eventually, maybe not immediately, but eventually, he'd mention the cave, the shelter, the area where he was saved. Researchers would come, investigators, and behind them, inevitably, hunters. Alpha's family would have to flee, but they couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, they'd be found, cornered, killed, unless someone could help them stay hidden, someone who understood human patterns, human thinking, someone who could warn them when danger was approaching. Teach them how to avoid detection in an increasingly technological world. Someone like James Morrison, forest ranger, expert in wilderness survival and human behavior. In exchange, they would keep him safe, feed him, shelter him, accept him as one of their own. But he could never go back, never contact his family, never let anyone know he survived. If he went back even once, the pattern would start. Investigation, discovery, death. It was a life sentence in the wilderness, exile from everything he knew, but it would save an entire species. Alpha showed him one final image, his son, me, David, age 10, playing in the backyard. Then me, grown up, happy, healthy, alive. Then the alternative. Hunters tracking Alpha's family back to their territories, finding other families, systematic extinction. And somewhere in the crossfire, someone targeting the ranger who'd seen too much, targeting his family for leverage. Me, dead, because my father came home. The choice wasn't just about Bigfoot, it was about keeping his family safe too. Sometimes love means staying away. My father spent 3 weeks in that cave, wrestling with the decision. Alpha never pressured him. She simply showed him the consequences of both choices, then waited. The male, my father would later learn his name was Tor, gradually warmed to him, brought him fish from an underground stream, taught him basic gestures of their language. The juveniles lost their fear, started playing around him. One of them, a young male named Kip, would bring him interesting rocks, trade them for berries. My father watched their family dynamics, saw how they cared for each other, how the adolescents would help the juveniles learn to forage, how Alpha and Tor would sleep curled around their children, protective. They weren't animals, they were people. People facing extinction. On August 31st, 1987, my father made his decision. He took off his ranger badge, looked at it for a long time. Then he placed it carefully on a rock where it would be found by search crews. He removed his wedding ring, kissed it, left it next to the badge, and he walked deeper into the cave, into the darkness, into his new life. The last time James Morrison existed as a human being. My father spent 36 years in the wilderness. To truly understand what that means, what he sacrificed, what he learned, you need to know what those years looked like. 1987-1990, the learning. The first 3 years were the hardest. My father had to learn their language, not just sounds, but the gestural system, the pheromone communication, the empathic sharing of images and emotions. It took him 6 months to master basic phrases. 2 years before he could have complex conversations. He learned their history. Alpha shared it with him in fragmented visions, like flipping through a 1,000-year-old photo album. Their people, they call themselves kindred in the closest translation, have lived in North America for at least 12,000 years, maybe longer. They're not descended from apes. They're something else, something parallel to human evolution, but separate. They evolved intelligence, language, culture, but they chose a different path than humans. Humans built cities, the kindred built harmony with the forest. Humans developed technology, the kindred developed empathy. Humans conquered nature. The kindred became part of it. For thousands of years, they coexisted with indigenous peoples. There are stories, legends passed down, of trade, cooperation, even friendship. The native peoples of the Pacific Northwest knew about them, respected them, protected their secrets. Then Europeans arrived, and everything changed. The kindred became targets, curiosities, trophies. Their natural avoidance of humans turned from caution into survival instinct. By the 20th century, they were nearly extinct. Maybe 500 individuals left across all of North America. Fragmented, isolated, hunted. Alpha's family was one of the last remaining lineages in Oregon. My father realized he wasn't just protecting one family. He was protecting an endangered species' last genetic reservoir. In year 3, Alpha introduced my father to something he hadn't known existed, the network. Once every 5 years, families from across the Pacific Northwest would gather at sacred sites, exchange information, coordinate territories, arrange mating between families to maintain genetic diversity. In 1990, my father attended his first gathering, 43 kindred from 7 different families. It was the largest assembly in 50 years. They were dying out. Everyone knew it. Birth rates were declining, territories shrinking, human encroachment increasing. Some advocated for contact, reveal themselves to humans, ask for protection, like Endangered Species Acts. Others argued for retreat, move to Alaska, Canada, remote areas where humans rarely ventured. My father offered a third option, active concealment. I can teach you, he said through Alpha translating. Teach you how humans think, how they track, how they investigate. I can help you stay one step ahead. The other families were skeptical. Why would a human help them? My father showed them his memories, shared what Alpha had shown him, the choice he'd made, the sacrifice. By the end of the gathering, 6 families had agreed to work with him. The network was born. My father developed a system. Each family had a territory, roughly 40 square miles. He taught them to rotate through their territories in unpredictable patterns. Never camp in the same place twice in a month. never use the same trails consecutively. He taught them to recognize human technology, distinguish between tourists, harmless, and trackers, dangerous, identify camera traps, motion sensors, acoustic monitors. He showed them how to leave false signs, fake tracks in wrong directions, disturbed campsites that led nowhere. Make searchers think they'd just missed a Bigfoot, then abandon the area. Most importantly, he taught them to monitor humans, young kindred, adolescents who could pass as large humans in poor lighting, would occasionally venture near human settlements, libraries, ranger stations. They'd listen to conversations, observe patterns, report back. When my father learned about planned expeditions, Bigfoot hunters, researchers, documentary crews, he'd alert the families. They'd evacuate the area weeks before the humans arrived. From 1995 to 2005, they successfully avoided 23 major expeditions, 0 confirmed sightings, 0 casualties. The system was working, but technology was evolving faster than they could adapt. Trail cameras became cheap, ubiquitous. Thermal imaging became standard equipment for hunters. Drones could cover vast areas with 4K cameras. In 2007, a research team from Stanford deployed motion-activated cameras across a 200-square-mile area. They got 127 images of kindred over 3 months. My father had to coordinate a mass evacuation. 4 families, over 50 individuals, had to abandon their traditional territories simultaneously, move to backup ranges they'd barely scouted. 2 juveniles got separated from their families, lost for 6 days. My father spent sleepless nights tracking them, finally locating them near a recreational lake. He had to cause a small forest fire, controlled but scary, to drive away the holiday campers so the juveniles could safely return home. In 2011, a hiking blogger published photographs that were too clear, too detailed. The images went viral. Within weeks, trophy hunters from 3 states descended on the area. My father sabotaged their equipment, slashed tires, accidentally started small rock slides that blocked access roads, got creative with bear spray and portable hornets' nests. He became a ghost story among the hunting community. Bad Luck Jim, they called him. The ranger who was always around when equipment failed, when accidents happened, when hunts went wrong. They never suspected he was the same James Morrison who died in 1987. August 2015, my mother died. A young kindred named Whisper, one of the network scouts, brought my father the news. He'd been near Bend, gathering information, and overheard funeral arrangements being discussed at a coffee shop. Sarah Morrison, age 58, pancreatic cancer, survived by her son David. My father broke down. Alpha found him 3 days later, deep in the forest, unresponsive. He'd stopped eating, stopped moving, just sat against a tree, staring at nothing. The family stayed with him, brought him food he wouldn't eat, water he wouldn't drink. On the 4th day, one of the young females, Una, Alpha's granddaughter, sat next to him. She didn't say anything, just leaned against him. After a long silence, she shared an image, her own mother, dead, killed by hunters when Una was just a juvenile. She shared the grief, the emptiness, the rage. Then she shared something else, her mother's final moment, pushing Una into hiding, taking the bullets meant for her daughter, choosing to die so her child could live, just like my father had chosen to die to the world so his son could live safely. Una nuzzled against him, made a soft sound. The translation was simple. Your sacrifice mattered. Don't waste it with guilt. My father started eating again the next day. The last 3 years were the worst. The Kellerman organization, yes, it had a name now and infrastructure, had gone high-tech. They used satellite imaging to identify areas with unusual thermal signatures, AI algorithms to analyze reported sightings, and predict kindred movement patterns. Custom-designed acoustic sensors that could differentiate between known animal sounds and unknown vocalizations. In 2021, they got footage, real, undeniable footage of Coda, one of Alpha's sons, crossing a stream. The video was 43 seconds long, crystal clear, anatomically detailed. They didn't publish it. That was the terrifying part. Instead, they used it internally, refined their tracking, narrowed their search grid. In 2022, they came within 200 yards of Alpha's family. My father had to use a technique he'd been saving as a last resort. He triggered a false fire alarm, causing a massive emergency response that flooded the area with firefighters and helicopters. The Kellerman team had to evacuate or risk exposure. But my father knew it was only a matter of time. The kindred were running out of space, running out of options, and my father was getting old, slower, weaker. He'd turned 74. His knees hurt, his back hurt. He couldn't hike 20 miles a day anymore. Alpha was dying too. Cancer, same as my mother. Poetic, horrible. The family needed a new plan. That's when Karen Fletcher took her photographs. And that's when my father realized maybe it was time for a different kind of sacrifice, not disappearing from the world, but inviting someone new into the secret, someone young enough, strong enough to carry on the work. His son, me. Previous reunion scene from my earlier draft, now with additional detail. October 16th, 2023, 6:47 a.m. Keep previous reunion scene but add, after we talked, my father wanted to show me something more. Come, he said. There's someone else you need to meet. We walked deeper into the forest. Alpha and the family followed at a distance, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give us space. We came to a clearing I hadn't seen before. Smaller, more intimate. There was a grave, not marked with a headstone, but marked nonetheless. A cairn of carefully stacked stones, woven branches forming a protective arch, carvings in the bark of surrounding trees, symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood. Someone important was buried here. Alpha's daughter, my father said quietly, Mira, killed by Kellerman's people in 1981. She was 14 years old, juvenile. I looked at the grave, at the care that had gone into its maintenance. Fresh flowers, wild flowers, had been placed recently. The family tends it, my father continued. Every week they bring offerings, they sing to her, they share memories. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand what we're protecting, not just an abstract concept, not just an endangered species. We're protecting people who love, who grieve, who remember their dead. He knelt beside the grave, placed his hand on the stones. I never got to visit your mother's grave, he said. By the time she died, I'd been gone so long, I couldn't risk it. But I think about her every day, and I come here, talk to Mira, tell her about Sarah, about you, about the life I left behind. He looked up at me. 2 women, different species, both dead too young, both loved fiercely by people who couldn't save them. I knelt beside him. For a moment, we just sat there, father and son, at the grave of someone I'd never met, mourning for people we'd both lost. I forgive you, I said suddenly. He turned, shocked. Not completely, I clarified, not. I'm still angry, still hurt, but I understand why you did it, and I forgive you for making an impossible choice in an impossible situation. My father started crying, quietly, tears running down his weathered face. We sat there until Alpha came to get us. The family was moving. We needed to follow. Now continue with the 3 days in the wilderness. Expanded. Day 1, learning Alpha assigned Coda, one of the adult males, her son, to teach me basics. Coda was patient, gentle, terrifying. He stood 8.5 feet tall, weighed probably 700 pounds, muscles like iron cables under his fur, but he moved with precision, grace, never wasted motion. He taught me their language through immersion, would make a sound, then show me what it meant. A low rumble, danger, a clicking sound, come here, a whistle, all clear. But the real language wasn't vocal. It was gestural, postural, emotional. They could share feelings directly, almost telepathically, not reading minds, more like broadcasting emotional states. Empathy turned into communication. When Coda was pleased with my progress, I'd feel it. Warm satisfaction, like sunlight on skin. When I made a mistake, I'd feel his patient amusement. Never mockery, just gentle correction. It was the most honest form of communication I'd ever experienced. You couldn't lie, couldn't hide. Your emotions were exposed. I asked my father how he'd adapted to it. It was hard at first, he admitted. Humans are so used to hiding what we feel, lying even to ourselves. But after a while, it was liberating. Imagine never having to guess what someone really means, never worrying about subtext or hidden agendas. They live in complete emotional honesty. Yeah, it's exhausting, but beautiful. Day 2. The hunt Coda invited me to join a hunt. Kindred are omnivores, but they're primarily gatherers. They hunt maybe twice a month, usually deer or elk, occasionally fish. The hunt I witnessed was surgical. 6 of them moved through the forest in perfect coordination. No words, just shared intent. They'd identified a young buck with a broken leg. Injured, wouldn't survive anyway. They surrounded it, gave it no chance to suffer or panic. Coda delivered a killing blow so fast, the deer probably didn't even realize it was dead. Then they did something I didn't expect. They thanked it. All 6 kindred gathered around the body, placed their hands on it, and sang, not words, just sound, harmonies that made my chest ache, a song of gratitude, of respect, of sorrow for taking a life, even out of necessity. They sang for 5 full minutes. My father stood next to me, tears streaming down his face. They do this for every kill, he whispered, every single one. They never take life casually. The kindred butchered the deer efficiently, wasted nothing. Hide for clothing, bones for tools, organs for immediate consumption, meat wrapped in leaves for transport. Then they scattered the remains carefully. Gut pile left for scavengers, blood washed away in a stream. Within an hour, there was almost no trace they'd been there. They're better environmentalists than we'll ever be, my father said. They understand balance, not dominance. Balance. Day 3. The children. The juveniles, there were 4 of them, gradually lost their fear of me. By day 3, they were treating me like a curiosity, a weird, hairless, clumsy member of the family who needed constant supervision. The youngest, a female named Pip, decided I was her project. She brought me things constantly, rocks, berries, feathers. Each time she'd make a chirping sound and wait for my reaction. When I'd compliment her finds, she'd feel pleased. I could sense it, pride, joy. She reminded me of my own daughter at that age, eager to show off, desperate for approval. At one point, Pip slipped and fell into a shallow creek. She came up sputtering, more embarrassed than hurt. Without thinking, I laughed. She froze, stared at me. Then she laughed back. A huffing, hooting sound that was unmistakably laughter. The other juveniles joined in. Soon all of us were laughing. Coda was laughing. Even Alpha, resting nearby, made a sound like distant thunder that I realized was amusement. In that moment, the barriers dissolved. They weren't animals I was studying. I wasn't a human they were tolerating. We were just family, laughing together. My father watched from a distance, smiling. Later, he said, "That's why I stayed. That moment right there, when you realize we're not that different, when you feel connection that transcends species. It gets into your blood, David, this life, this family, and you can't imagine going back to a world where people are just people and everything else is just animals. Because that division is false. We're all just beings trying to survive, trying to care for each other. The kindred understand that. Humans forgot. Night 3, Alpha's request. On the final night, Alpha called me to her bedside. She was weak. The cancer was spreading fast. My father said she had weeks, maybe days, but her mind was still sharp, her eyes still fierce. She gestured for me to sit. Coda translated, my father was sleeping, exhausted. Through images and emotions, Alpha told me a story. She showed me her great-grandmother, living in a time when kindred numbered in the thousands, when they had entire valleys to themselves, when they didn't have to hide every moment of every day. She showed me the decline, the hunters, the extinctions, families wiped out one by one. She showed me the present, maybe 200 kindred left across the entire Pacific Northwest, fragmented, isolated on the edge of genetic collapse. She showed me the future, 2 paths. Path 1, continued hiding. Eventually, they'd be discovered anyway, studied, exploited, placed in preserves like zoo animals, stripped of dignity. Path 2, find a way to coexist, not reveal themselves to everyone, that would be suicide, but create a network of human protectors, people like my father, like me, people who could help them navigate the modern world without surrendering their autonomy. Alpha believed Path 2 was their only chance at survival, but it required trust, enormous, terrifying trust. She showed me one final image, me, standing at a crossroads. One path led back to my normal life. The other led deeper into the forest. Which would I choose? I didn't answer immediately. I asked for time to think. Alpha rumbled. Coda translated, wise. Thoughtless promises break faster than spoken ones. Think, then decide. October 20th, 2023. Morning. I woke before dawn. Couldn't sleep. I walked to the edge of the camp, looked out at the forest, tried to imagine what my life would become if I said yes. My father found me there. Can't sleep either, he said. We stood in silence for a while. I'm not asking you to give up your life like I did, he finally said. That's not what Alpha wants. She's smarter than that. She knows the world has changed. Then what does she want? A bridge. Someone who can live in both worlds. Maintain a normal life, but also help coordinate protection. Use technology to monitor threats. Create early warning systems. You'd be like an intelligence operative, except instead of serving a country, you'd be serving a species. That sounds insane when you say it like that. He laughed. Yeah, it is insane, completely insane. But it's also right. You know it is. I did know. That was the problem. What about my kids? I asked. Do they know? Do they get a choice? Not yet. They're too young. But eventually, yes. This isn't a secret that gets kept from family. It's a legacy that gets passed down. Your grandchildren would know their great-grandfather didn't die in a fire, that he lived a life of purpose, that he helped save something precious. I thought about that, about legacy, about what we leave behind. I'll do it, I said, but on one condition. What's that? I get to tell them the truth, my wife, my kids, not now, but eventually. I won't build my help on lies. My father considered, nodded. Alpha will agree to that. Truth is important to them. They don't understand human lies. He hugged me, properly, for the first time in 36 years. I'm proud of you, son. I learned from the best. November 2023, January 2024. I started small, created an encrypted website, began monitoring hunter forums, cryptozoology groups, government survey plans. Whenever I found something concerning, I'd alert Karen. She'd pass it through the network. But I also started building something bigger. I recruited 7 people. Karen Fletcher, wildlife photographer, Dr. Lisa Chen, conservation biologist, distant relative of my mother, Marcus Whitehorse, Salish tribal ranger, whose ancestors had always known. Sam Rodriguez, tech entrepreneur, privacy advocate. Jennifer Moss, Forest Service ranger, my father's old colleague's daughter. Tom McAllister, retired FBI agent, disillusioned with government secrecy. Rachel Kim, documentary filmmaker, who agreed to never publish. We called ourselves the Guardians, unofficial, unfunded, operating on principle alone. By January 2024, we'd successfully diverted 12 hunting expeditions, prevented 7 potential sightings, protected 3 families from discovery. It was working. December 14th, 2023. My father called. Alpha had died. I drove out immediately, broke every speed limit. I arrived at the territory to find the entire family gathered. Not just Alpha's immediate relatives. Kindred from 3 other families had come to pay respects. 19 individuals standing in a circle around Alpha's body. They were singing. The harmonies were indescribable, haunting, beautiful, mournful, grateful. They sang for 2 hours straight. Then they buried her, not in a hole but in a natural way, placed her body in a hollow log, covered it with moss and ferns and wildflowers, let her return to the forest. My father spoke at the ceremony, in their language, perfectly fluent. He thanked her for saving his life, for teaching him what family truly meant, for trusting him when she had every reason not to. Coda responded, thanked my father for giving them 36 years they wouldn't have had otherwise, for teaching them how to survive in a changing world. Then Una, Alpha's granddaughter, the new matriarch, stepped forward. She was young, maybe 25 in human years, but she carried herself with authority. She approached me, placed her hand on my chest, shared an image. 2 families, human and kindred, intertwined like roots of ancient trees, supporting each other, protecting each other, a promise, a covenant. I placed my hand on her chest, shared my own image, my children, grown, standing in this same forest, making the same promise to Una's children, a legacy, a future. She rumbled her approval. The pact was sealed. March 2024, I told my wife the truth, all of it. The forest, my father, the kindred, everything. She thought I was having a breakdown, suggested therapy, gently but firmly, so I took her to meet them. Una agreed to a brief encounter, carefully controlled, safe. My wife, Jennifer, stood at the edge of the meadow, watched Una emerge from the tree line with 2 juveniles. She fainted. When she came to, Una was sitting next to her, gently, not threatening, just present. Jennifer touched Una's hand. Una shared an image, simple, direct, a question. Will you help us too? Jennifer started crying, nodded. Yes, oh God, yes. June 2024. We started a legal fund, anonymous donations, carefully laundered through environmental nonprofits. Goal: establish legal protections for unidentified hominids before the kindred are officially discovered. It's a long shot, but if we can get laws on the books first, protections against capture, exploitation, forced habitation, then when they're inevitably discovered, they'll at least have some legal shield. Marcus is working the tribal angle. Many tribal nations are willing to extend protections to cryptid species on their lands, create legal gray zones where federal authorities can't easily operate. Dr. Chen is working the scientific angle. She's preparing papers based on hypothetical scenarios, arguing for ethical protocols for contact with undiscovered intelligent species. Sam is building a dark web network, encrypted, anonymous, so kindred families across North America can communicate safely, share warnings, coordinate movements. We're building an infrastructure for a species that officially doesn't exist. It's absurd. It's necessary. August 2024, present. It's been almost a year since I found my father. In that time, we've protected 8 kindred families across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California prevented 47 potential discoveries, recruited 23 guardians, established 4 sanctuary zones on protected tribal lands, created an early warning system that's flagged 89 potential threats. But we've also had losses. In July, a young male named Swift was shot by a hunter who mistook him for a bear. He survived, but barely. The bullet nicked his femoral artery. My father and Coda had to perform field surgery with primitive tools. Swift lived, but he'll walk with a limp forever. In September, a researcher with a drone got footage. 30 seconds, clear, unmistakable. We had to track him down. Sam hacked his computer, corrupted the files. Tom convinced him to abandon his research. It was close, too close. The Kellerman organization is getting more sophisticated. Last month, they deployed AI-powered acoustic analysis across 3 national forests. They're mapping vocalizations, building a database. We're in an arms race, and we're not sure we can win. October 2024. My father is declining. He's 75 now. His body can't handle the wilderness anymore. Arthritis, heart problems, chronic bronchitis from 37 years breathing campfire smoke. Una has suggested he come live with me. Transition out of the forest. He's resisting. Says he made an oath. Says this is where he belongs. But I can see it in his eyes. He's tired. He wants to rest. Part of me wants to drag him out of there. Put him in a hospital, force him to accept medical care. But I understand now, he's not a prisoner. He chose this life, and he gets to choose how it ends. Last week, I visited him, brought my kids. His grandchildren finally met him. They asked why he looked so old, so weathered. I told them, because he spent his whole life protecting something important, and that kind of work ages you. My daughter, Emma, she's 11, asked, "Was it worth it?" My father looked at her, smiled. "Every single day," he said. It's November 30th, 2024 now. I'm recording this from my office. Hardware stores closed. Families asleep upstairs. In a few hours, I'm driving out to Silver Creek. There's a Kellerman team moving into the area. We need to coordinate an evacuation. My father will be there. Una's family will be there. Maybe we can pull this off without incident. Maybe, or maybe this is the time we get caught, the time the secret comes out. If it does, I hope we've built enough legal protections, enough public goodwill, enough infrastructure to keep them safe. But I don't know. All I know is this. My father made a choice 37 years ago. He sacrificed everything to protect something precious. Now it's my turn, not to replace him. I could never do that, but to honor him, to continue the work, to keep the oath, the forest ranger's oath, to protect all life, even the life that isn't supposed to exist, especially that life. Because if we can't protect the vulnerable, the endangered, the ones without voices, then what are we protecting? My father understood that. He lived it. He gave up everything for it. And when I was angry, when I hated him, when I couldn't understand, he was still out there, still keeping the oath, still protecting them. I'm not my father. I'm not as brave, not as selfless, but I'm trying. And maybe that's enough. This is David Morrison signing off. If you're listening to this and you think it's fiction, good. Keep thinking that. But if you're listening to this and you know deep down that some stories are too specific, too detailed, too real to be made up, then maybe you understand. There are things in the world that deserve protection more than proof. There are secrets worth keeping. There are oaths worth honoring. My father kept his oath for 37 years. I'll keep mine for the rest of my life. And maybe if we're lucky, if we're careful, if we're smart, the forest will keep its secrets a little while longer. Long enough for the kindred to survive. Long enough for my children to take up the oath. Long enough for hope. Remember, not all heroes are recognized. Some of them disappear into the forest and become legends themselves.